I've been asked several times to comment what I think about the June 2019 Democrat debates. I think mostly they speak for themselves if you actually can sit through the entire 5-hour ordeal, but there are some parts that I'd like to emphasize. First off, if you look at the stage, the massive stage that doesn't have a single real American flag, it's so symbolic. Yeah, they kind of have these weird perversions of the American flag, like a star here and maybe a red stripe or a blue stripe, but not actually a real, full, complete American flag for a presidential debate. Then, after that, multiple candidates spoke in Spanish to pander to those who haven't even tried to acclimate to this country and yet who will be voting. Of course, this is the same party who fights against voter ID and who wants to give driver's licenses to these illegal aliens so they can use those driver's licenses, as voter ID. Well, then Kamala Harris used her race as a club with which to attack Joe Biden. Rather predictable. On the second day of debates, every single candidate on stage said that he or she would give free healthcare to illegal aliens.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay.
You the taxpayer pay in, and the illegal aliens, they receive. They don't pay in. On the first day that they arrive, they're entitled, I guess would be the best word, to your tax money, according to these Democrat candidates. So essentially, you will be paying for the healthcare of the world. Anyone who comes here, anyone who needs anything, can get the healthcare at your expense. They all promoted what they threw around as common sense gun reform. Who knows what that is, because almost nobody said what that means or what they want. Joe Biden said that he wants only smart guns. Smart guns are guns that have some kind of biometric test before you can fire them to make sure that you're the owner. Smart guns are actually mostly theoretical in the United States because none of our gun manufacturers produce smart guns. During the Clinton era, Smith & Wesson started to devote some money toward that cause and almost died as a result. They had investors en masse leave bail on them, and at the same time sales for all of their guns bottomed out. Why? Because it was like a black mark against them that they were involved. People don't want this. Why would you want a gun, if your wife or your husband or whoever in your house couldn't use it to defend themselves if they were under attack? Nobody wants one of those. Then, Kamala Harris and Eric Swalwell both supported a mandatory buyback for assault weapons, which I suppose is anything that's black and long. What that would mean is that if you refuse to sell your weapon to the government, then the police would show up at your house and demand it back. If you didn't give it, would you be arrested, maybe shot in front of your family? Who knows how that would go? Realistically, you're talking about a bloodbath. Because there would be decent militia groups who would side with the people. There would be decent law enforcement groups who would side with the people against the totalitarian groups who would try and take your guns away and try and take away your ability to defend yourself. That's how you start a civil war in America. Biden said that he would support a buyback, but he wasn't really very clear on whether he was talking mandatory or voluntary. To be honest, he seemed kind of confused throughout a lot of the debate. He did say that during the Obama administration that he had changed the rule on the number of clips that a gun can have. It seems that he knows absolutely nothing. Maybe he means the number of bullets that a gun can have, but no one seems to know exactly what law he's even talking about. But they know so little on this topic, the Democrats, that they can't even make coherent statements that make sense. I mean, the number of clips in a gun, really? That they imply that disarmament would be a great thing if you could achieve it. But you look at these Democrat strongholds where they have tried to disarm the people, the areas with the tightest gun laws, and what you see is really high crime rates. What you see is really high murder rates, high rates of gun crime, in fact. They should know it's their areas, and they just completely ignore it. Then, repeatedly, climate change was mentioned, not as a small addendum, but rather as the most important issue, as they like to call it, an existential crisis. Because if you use big words, and you say it often enough, people just start to believe it, and it'll seem real, and it'll seem sciencey. At least, that's what they think. since we're on the topic of science, they then got into the abortion topic, where they equated abortion with women's health. You know, apparently it's not girls' health, you know, that the girl who's actually in the womb, but regardless. Then one of the candidates said that free abortions, should be available to trans women. That's biological men. The delusion there is at like epic levels, and it shows just how well they really deal with science, you know, when it doesn't agree with them. Bernie Sanders made it clear that abortions would be free and taxpayer funded under his Medicare for All plan. You know, in case anybody was worried, the taxpayer money will be used to fund every abortion. Then the candidates attacked the economy. In its current state, that's insane. I would not have brought the economy up if I was one of them. The economy hasn't been better since Reagan. By some metrics, it's better than it was during the Reagan era. And the groups that the Democrats pander to most are also doing well. Everyone is doing better. You know, like black unemployment and all of these different groups they try and appeal to and try and pander to individually are all doing better. Because under this kind of economy, everybody rises together, and that's why it's really hard for them to be so divisive when there is prosperity. Because we have, well, everyone's doing better, so you have equal prosperity for everyone, and that makes it really hard for them to be, you know, to push the division that is necessary for them to drive us all apart. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard, who some people say is more reasonable, attacked Trump for pulling out of the Iran deal. The Iran deal was atrocious. It allowed Iran, well, basically Iran started doing whatever they wanted as far as weapons, and we had strangled ourselves and weren't able to do the same thing. Then Tulsi congratulated herself on voting for the Equality Act. For those who don't recall, the Equality Act was the bill that would put trans people, i.e. men, and the mentally ill and anybody else, inside of girls' bathrooms. It would also essentially destroy girls' sports by preventing, well, them from having just girls' sports. It would put boys who claimed that they were girls inside of girls' sports. And thus, we essentially would put together the boys and the girls would never win another sport again. That's just science, you know, that they hate so much. Well, then Bernie Sanders admitted that he will, in fact, raise taxes on the middle class. Something that is hard to pin him down on, but when you do, he'll actually admit, yes, taxes will go up. He points out that our healthcare is the most expensive in the world. That's actually true. The thing is that he thinks that, or at least he claims, that the reason is because other places have socialized medicine, that makes it cheap. That's not true. The reason that our healthcare is so expensive is that we have so much government involvement. We have so much regulation that we can't even have new players, new companies popping up. There's too much regulation. It's strangling. We actually have more regulation than you have in a lot of these socialized medicine countries. So, yeah, our healthcare is made expensive by the government. What you really want is a free market where new companies can emerge, where you have real competition that drive prices down. But Bernie, well, he wants to fight the system by making it bigger and more powerful. Yeah, so he doesn't actually want to fight the system. He is the system. Elizabeth Warren said that she wants to abolish private healthcare. It seems almost like a slip now, because she is already claiming that she doesn't actually want to abolish private insurance. She just misunderstood. Yeah, you see, she got a lot of outrage after the debates, especially amongst the unions, who at this point are pretty much fed up with the Democrats. The unions fought for decades to ensure that the private insurance industry would take care of them. The rich in countries like England, which are heralded as, you know, great countries of socialized care, the rich in those countries use privatized healthcare whenever they can. Because it's better. Because it's better in every way aside from the upfront price. That's it. But if you aren't really rich in England, if you have to put up with the standard of care, then you'll be talking about waiting 6 months for some, you know, operations or even tests in some cases. Then you might find out that the best treatment is too expensive for the system to handle. You know, so your tax dollars essentially don't cover it. And in that case, they might choose to say, amputate your leg, instead of giving you the treatment that was better, that you'd actually have to come to the United States to get. That's the system that we're trying to avoid. They all failed to talk about the more important issues, the issues that Americans really care about, one of which is immigration. And I'm not talking about open borders, that's not what Americans want. They want to actually have competitive wages, and not to have this massive influx of mass immigration that we have right now at the border, including of people who, are criminals, in other ways in addition to just crossing the border. Bernie Sanders said that he wants to rotate the Supreme Court, and claimed that he had the constitutional authority to do that. It seems like they're just literally making stuff up at this point. He has no constitutional ability to do that, and he wouldn't if he were president. But if we were to rotate, I think it only seems fair that we should do the oldest first, which would be, Ruth Ginsburg. Yeah, I'm just saying the two newest people on the Supreme Court were both conservatives. Finally, Andrew Yang, one of the more reasonable, relatively speaking, candidates, had his microphone silenced except when he was called upon, and he was almost never called upon. He got the lowest amount of time to speak out of any of the candidates. And it makes you wonder why. Yang did go on at least one conservative show, that might be one of the reasons. Moreover, he can make more cogent arguments than most of them. Most of them just seem frankly insane. But one of his big plans is to give $1,000 a month to every United States citizen. And while that might at first glance sound like just something the Democrats are doing, you see, he wants to do it to everyone. Unlike the, reparations and these other methods of just giving to certain groups, he doesn't want to do any of that. He wants to give it to every single United States citizen. And so in that regard, he's actually pulling away from the Democrat message. And, well, it's, I guess you could say, more fair. At the same time, he wants to dismantle some of the welfare state. So there's that too. There are multiple reasons. The Democrats now seem to be increasingly racist toward Asians. You see that in things like admissions at universities and how the system is actually jaded against them. So there are a lot of reasons why Yang was silenced, I think. But obviously it was unfair. Okay, those are the highlights or lowlights, however you want to see it. But really, it was nauseating to watch the full 5 hours or so of the debates. It was absolutely terrible. I can't see how anybody would be voting Democrat at this point. Stop. Don't leave yet. Since you made it to the end, you probably enjoyed that video. In that case, here are some other videos that you might enjoy. The updates link at the top will provide you with better ways to be more reliably notified of new videos, and it also has social media information, that kind of thing. That's because you know how this site is. Well, the link at the bottom, the store link, that's in case you're looking for merchandise or our healthier products. Thanks.